Upon first reading of the Torah portion of Noach, it seems like a pointless Torah portion. Man has failed. Man has failed God. God wants to destroy the world. So what does he do? He chooses his prized pupil, Noach, because he walked before God, because he had a good relationship with God, and we all know the story. Why do I say it's a pointless Torah portion? Because after God destroys the world, after God creates a covenant with the world, Noach and his family depart the ark, and they start with a foil shtick all over, with the misconduct. It's as if we're back to square one. What was the point? Why destroy the world? Why the covenant if Noach and his children and the offspring then start misbehaving? Why not just go straight from Adam to Abraham? There's one hint at the beginning of this Torah portion, which I think teaches us, perhaps, that we cannot read the Torah portion of Noach by itself, isolated, but we have to read it with another completing story just a few verses before in Genesis. Why does God choose Noach? We are told he chooses him because Et Elokim italech Noach, because Noach walked before God, walked with God, right? He had a good relationship with him. Et Elokim italech Noach. When you listen to that sentence, that verse, it rings a bell. If you read the Torah, it rings a bell very similar to a verse we just read last week in the end of Genesis. Veitalech Chanoch et Elokim. This time it is Chanoch who is walking with God. Now make no mistake, these two verses are only split apart by a few verses. They are identical in their meaning. These are two men who are walking with God, who have a relationship with God. So they have the same meaning. They almost have the same numeric value because Chanoch sounds very much like Noach. And the only difference is that their structure, it's almost, it's mind-boggling. They have a completely different structure, yet they mean the same thing. It's almost as if the text is begging us, put us together. Turn us into one story. And when we put them into one story, I think it can help us understand what is going on with Noach and why it is not pointless, but it needs to be read perhaps with the story of Chanoch. So what happened with Chanoch? If Noach is a failed attempt, when God puts all hope in man's hands alone, man fails. With Chanoch, I think we have the exact opposite. It is when God puts all of his faith in one man, but from above in the heavens, and there too there is a failure, and I'll explain. Right after we are told that Chanoch walks before God, we are then told, Ve'einenu ki lakach oto Elokim. And he is no longer, because God took him. Sages are arguing all over, throughout the ages, what does this mean? There is one sage, Yonatan ben Uziel, who was the prized pupil of Hillel HaZaken. He lived back in the time of the Second Temple, and he translated the Bible into, or most of it into Aramaic. He tells us, he takes, and Chanoch was no longer, to mean, in Aramaic, God took Chanoch from this world, he took him up to the heavens, and he turned him into Metatron. Don't ask me what Metatron is, it is spooky stuff. Now, if we were to read the Torah portion of Noach isolated by itself, it seems pointless, because man has failed God and we're back to square one after the flood, so what's the point? If we were to read Chanoch's story isolated by itself, it seems that here too there is a failed attempt on God's part, because what is the point of taking Chanoch, if not perhaps an earlier attempt to better the world through taking a prized person who walked with God up to the heavens and trying either to start something afresh up there, or through Chanoch to make this world a better place. But that clearly didn't work, because we're back to square one with this week's Torah portion. And I think what this can mean, these two verses who are so similar together, might teach us is that we need both. We need Chanoch and we need Noach. We need the heavens and the earth. The Torah might be teaching us, it is man alone cannot do this, but heavens alone cannot succeed either. We need both to make this world a better place. We need the Chanochs and the Noachs. We need above and below, much like rainfall that destroyed this world that goes from top to bottom, and like the springs that go from the bottom to the top. We need Chanoch and Noach to look at these two stories together. Thoughts on Parashat Noach. Shabbat Shalom.